Hey guys, welcome back. Episode 2 of the Sauvage podcast today. Today we'll be talking about the Lord of the Rings franchise and why it still remains the greatest of all time. Last episode we
Preach.
talked about the Predator franchise with the amazing YouTuber and amazing person, Mr. H Reviews. Today we just have an amazing person. Please welcome on the show, Cameron.
What's up, boys and girls? Happy to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Oh,
Ready to get into it.
always a pleasure. Now, we recently watched Lord of the Rings about a couple months ago. We watched them with all the boys. We had a
Yeah,
marathon and everything, and
nothing beats it.
oh,
Nothing beats it.
what an amazing
Nothing.
experience. And it turned out one of our friends was also going to New Zealand, which is why we did it. And we watched all the extended editions, which is just
The only
top.
way to watch it.
The only way, basically, it caps it off as like just an amazing experience. And when you have all your friends there as well, it's just
Back.
getting someone on the Lord of the Rings train that also helps. And then when you see those
Yeah,
little
man.
moments, you yell out, "Oh, this actually happened behind the scenes!" And the Leonardo DiCaprio me, where you that's
Yeah.
it. Where you point
It's
out,
exactly.
um,
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. I mean, I've watched it. I personally am not a fan of watching things over and over again. I find it. I'd rather experience something new. But Lord of the Rings has always got that soft spot, and I'll
yeah.
watch it. Honestly. It's a yearly thing for me. If I don't watch it once a year, I feel like I'm doing a disservice to the trilogy. It is that good.
What's your Lord of the Rings story? Like, where did it start? How did it come for you to watch it? I'll say
Right.
mine after, but how did you come to watch it?
Hmm. Sure. Well, when I was young, I always was into, it was right up my alley, medieval kind of combat, although it's not a medieval kind of movie, the sword hand to hand kind of stuff. And I remember being young, I always liked the big scale battles. They always brought me in. And the story behind it, it's not that I didn't know it, but it was as important for me at the time. I could really just sit there and appreciate all the details in the battles and the time they went to iron out all the details. And it was just a masterpiece to watch even when I was a kid. And the good thing is, after rewatching it so many times, I picked up on little things and I learned more of the story. And I'm talking like I was 5, maybe 6. Like I remember watching it as a kid. My brother and I we'd watch it till we'd just go to our favorite scenes. We'd watch them over again, do something else. We'd come back, watch the other movie, and we just keep doing that. And just good times, really. And ever since then, I've just learned more and more about it. The lore is huge, but I'll never be able
Yeah.
to conquer. But as a trilogy, just really up there. I mean, one of my favorite. It is my favorite trilogy personally. But yeah.
No, 100%. For me, the third one is my favorite movie of all time. But for me, I didn't see him first till I was 12 years old, actually. It was the Christmas holidays in year 7, and that was the year The Hobbit came out, the first one. And
Oh,
I had
really?
no idea what that was about. Um, I was going to the movies with two friends of mine and my little brother, and we were planning to watch Les Miserables. It was just, I think it was like a
Oh, yeah.
musical. And
Yeah, yeah.
then we're at my uncle's house the night before, and my cousin's like, "Oh, you should guys go watch The Hobbit." And then we changed our mind last second. We're like, "Yeah, we'll go watch The Hobbit." And I had no idea. I'm like, what the heck is this crap?" It was rating like 8.5 at IMDb at the time because of early screenings. I'm like, "Whoa, what the heck
Right.
is this?" And then
Yeah,
my
yeah.
cousin tells me, he goes, "Oh, you should watch the other three first. They're called Lord of the Rings. They're set. They're set. They're the ones that were made first." And I'm like,
Yeah, yeah.
"Oh, I have no time. We're going tomorrow." So I watched The
Mm.
Hobbit, and then 40 minutes into it, I'm not gonna lie, I was bored as shit.
Yeah.
I really did not like
Not
it.
a Hobbit
I
lover.
remember my dad messaged me during the movie. He goes, "How is it?" I messaged back. I'm like, "Very boring." And then it got to one scene where Aragorn was telling the flashback story of or Bomba. I think I can't remember which character was saying. He was saying the backstory of the battle at the mines of Moria. And then I'm like,
Yeah.
"Oh, this is picking up now." I saw a massive battle, orcs, dwarves,
Yeah.
and I'm like, this is what I like in this." Then after that,
Yeah.
I love The Hobbit, the first one. It left you on a tease a
Yeah.
little bit with the dragon at the end, and I'm like, I want to see more. So
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
went, watched Lord of the Rings, illegally streamed it, by the way, um, on Putlocker. But at the time, I didn't know it was the extended editions I streamed. So I thought
Right.
they were the
Yeah.
normal editions because I saw the Two Towers was 4 hours, and I'm like, whoa, this is
Mm.
long. And then I watched that, and
Yeah.
then from then on, it's just been love Lord of the Rings. But that's
Yeah.
just my
Well,
story with it.
yeah, in my early watchings as well, I was watching the cinema cuts, and I remember because I would rewatch it so much. Eventually, I got one of my uncles gave it to me. He was a real fanatic with it too, and he gave me the Blu-ray extended editions. And I didn't know at the time. I didn't really know what an extended edition was. And then out of nowhere, I'm seeing these awesome scenes that just perfectly link it up. I'm like, oh, what is this? Is this a new movie? Like it was so crucial. Some scenes. like one that springs to mind a lot is like the mouth of Sauron scene. That's iconic, you know.
100%.
Like it's funny how that wasn't in there. The when they're sieging Gondor and they're like they call for the Grond to breach it. That you don't even know that they tried
Yeah.
with the siege, just getting rocked for the whole day and they
Yeah.
couldn't get through. So it's just little things like that. That extra detail is just so iconic, and I can't watch it without it now personally. But yeah, I
I
wouldn't have had any
I
before.
think the extended for the third one is the most important for me, because
Right.
first you have the death of Saruman, which I think that was big leaving out. I felt like,
Yeah.
I don't know, it wasn't even that long. I think just a bit more dialogue. That's all it was, and then he obviously had a tragic death. But I felt like that was
Yeah.
big to leave out, because like if some people might have gone without seeing the extended their whole life and then come and see that, like, oh, that's what happened to him, like. That's
Right.
just big. And then I think
Yeah.
the mouth of Sauron scene, that's also big in terms of Aragorn's character development as well, because you see, like,
100%. Yeah.
at that point he basically said, "Oh, there's no hope left." That's what the mouth of Sauron told him. Frodo's dead, but he's like, "Nah, stuff that shit, man. I don't care.
Yeah.
I'm still gonna beat your asses up.
Right.
Like, I don't care. I'm still going
Like
to battle toe
in
to
that
toe with
one
you guys."
scene, all the heroes just look like they've kind of
Yeah,
lost all the. He's the last kind of slither, and you
yeah,
see that again in the second movie as well,
yeah,
when even Theoden is in the keep, and it's looking bad. They're about to break in, and he's so much death, iconic quote, all
yeah,
that, and then he's like, well, we're gonna go out blazing, so ride out with me, and
yeah,
it's a heroic scene, and eventually they get saved by Gandalf,
yeah.
which is another iconic moment, but
Because like
just great movies.
the foundation of Lord of the Rings as well is like you always have the elves talking about the detriment of men, and men, how men always fail, and then they're the
Right.
cause of all this. But then also you have those moments like with Theoden in the keep, and then Aragorn as well when he kills the mouth of Sauron, and then he has the speech as well where it's like there's not even like 1,000 of them, and they're going up against 10,000 orcs. It's just
Right.
like
Right.
those are the moments where I'm like, this is why I
Mm.
love Lord of the Rings, and this, like, I want to be there fighting with Aragorn, and I can't just like I can't get over that sometimes. It's just like it's just those moments. I don't know why. It's just that's what makes Lord of the
Yeah.
Rings so good.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Yeah.
Yeah, and then you also have the world building. Peter Jackson obviously brought Tolkien's world to
Legend.
life. You have like,
Yeah.
especially in the first one, you have the scene where they're rowing the boats in the river, and then you have the two iconic statues. I'm just like, wow, at the time. And then you also look at the behind the scenes when you watch them on the Blu-ray disc, the box set. You also have how many sets they built as well. You have the set of Isengard and how they did the one take shot with they built like a mini pro camera, and they built it
Yeah.
in and took it down. I was like, wow, man, that is amazing
It's
filmmaking.
crazy.
It's just like,
Yeah. It was so ahead of its time, especially at the time. Like I recently rewatched the Star Wars, the prequels, and it was about the same time, maybe a bit after. But I mean, there, Star Wars. I'm not going to get into,
yeah,
each other, like because it's different universes, and everyone has their opinions. But the gap in just like cinematography is just incredible. I mean, you can just tell in the Lord of the Rings franchise there was no stone left unturned. I mean, everything was just ironed out. It was as best as it could have been, and you could just tell. If the viewers haven't seen a really good, it's a 2-clip thing from a YouTube channel called Corridor Digital. They kind of
yeah,
break down the effects and stuff. A really good watch. I mean, it
yeah.
really lets you appreciate the hard work that went into making them, and it really paid off. It really did. Yeah, it's worth a watch.
It's definitely so ahead of its time, especially with those
Mm.
corridor videos as well. I have them linked below as well to go look at them. They're amazing guys as well. They break down everything to like the digital animation of the Bridge of Khazad Dûm as well in the first one. They talk about how they made like 3D images as well with them running, and then they simulated it as well. And then it was
Mm.
that was just mind blowing. Like in terms of like how
Yeah.
ahead of its time as well. Then you compare it to Star Wars, and I'm not a prequel hater. I actually thoroughly like. I find enjoyment in the prequels. I'm not bashing him constantly and stuff. Um, when you look at the behind the scenes of that, there's a lot of blue screen and a lot of
Yeah.
CGI involved, and then also in the behind the scenes, they because Liam Neeson in the first one was 6'4", they had to build sets taller for him, so they had to adjust the blue screen heights as well, and it just I don't know that when you see like sets how they built it in Lord of the Rings, yeah, there was blue screen used here and there as well,
Mm.
CGI, but when you see the sets built, you're like when you're watching it, you're like that's a tangible thing, that's real. I
Right.
am there with them, and that's
Yeah.
that's what brings it to life. That's what I thought Peter Jackson
Yeah.
did well with the Lord of the Rings when you compare it to the Hobbit as well, which I think we'll talk a bit
Mm.
about later.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so I thought like the CGI, the blue screens, all that was just at a perfect point in time where they were using enough practical effects that it made you feel real. I mean, the Battle of Helm's Deep is easily the best battle on screen there will ever be. I think personally, it's going to be hard to top that. But that battle, it feels like you're there. I mean, when the rain starts coming down and there's like camera shots when the ladders are coming up, you're like, whoa, this is real. I mean, you can compare it to something like the Long Night kind of battle in Game of Thrones. It's 20 years later, they've got the money, they've got the CGI, they've got everything they need to make the perfect battle, and it just wasn't there. And I remember watching that. I was thinking, why wasn't it punching? What was wrong with it? And it's just those practical effects and the fluidity of the fight, and it kept coming in and out of the story with the Ents and Pippin and Merry. Taking the pace off it. It was just so perfect. Yeah. You're not going to be able to top that, even with unlimited budget. You really got to use those practical effects, and they did it very well.
And I remember I watched a video of a YouTuber named Mauler. I love him to death. He gets a lot of critique because his streams are like 10 hours long and he breaks down stuff with his fellow YouTubers. And I'd love to be with him one day, but that's a long way away. But they broke down the Avengers Endgame battle.
Right.
That end, and they were comparing that, and I believe they compared it to Helm's Deep and Game of Thrones. Because I remember, even though at the time I hadn't watched Game of Thrones, they were pitting the Long Night battles. That's gonna be the greatest ever, and everyone was so hyped for it. And then when you compare like the unlimited budget they had, so it was Endgame unlimited budget, and then you compare it to Helm's Deep where they used a miniature as well for the battle, and then even they used a miniature explosion for the bridge when the bomb came, and then you look at that, and then that felt more real than the battles we watched, even though they had an unlimited budget at the time.
Yeah, it's essentially an unlimited, and it's just the details of that explosion make it feel so real. I mean, I remember seeing that. I mean, you kind of see it coming when great Wormtongue's in the tower and he puts the candle near the kind of gunpowder stuff.
Yeah,
and
it's foreshadowed.
You're kind of like, it's foreshadowed, but when it happens, it's like you weren't even ready for that. Yeah. Like, it's such a significant blow to the defense there, and you're like, whoa, they are really under the pump. I remember kind of thinking that with the Long Night episode, spoilers, by the way, so everyone hasn't watched. I mean, I'm not spoiling much anyway. Season 8 wasn't great. In that one, there's a start where the Dothraki, who are like the cavalry charge, they charge out and they get essentially massacred. And at that point, I remember feeling like, whoa, this is like that time in Helm's Deep when that the bomb goes up in the dam kind of sewer pipe thing, and it's just like a massive turn in the battle, because you have Theoden saying, even with 10,000 strong, they'll fall upon this fortress like water upon rock. They're confident, even with their abilities, even though they're outnumbered. Like, what is it? Like 10 to 1, maybe
10,000
more after the
300.
And then it was, but then the elves came, so it's like
still 400.
I don't know how many elves.
Give or take, whatever. Still 10,000 to almost 500. 1,000, whatever. It's still heavily outnumbered.
Yeah, that's mad respect to the elves. By the
way. Respect the hustle. Thank you.
Respect that.
But with the Long Night, I remember watching that battle, and with the Helm's Deep battle, Theoden's like, I feel like let him come to us, let him try break us down, and that was a similar situation in the Long Night with the I forgot what they were called, the Night Walkers, is it?
Yeah. Well.
The Walkers. They're coming down to Winterfell. It's like, come on, break us down. But instead, you send the Dothraki out, and it's just like into the night, and it's just like, what the heck? These guys are gonna die.
Strategy.
You send them into no light whatsoever, and then I believe they send torches as well. So you're gonna kill some of your own cavalry as well. It's just like,
it was the most illogical battle play.
When you talk about battle tactics as well, it's just like,
I know there was so much potential for it as well. I mean, and then you compare it to like Helm's Deep. It was really like a last resort type of thing. Yeah. But I mean, it's just it's unfortunate that they took the path they did. I mean, everything in that season 8. Sorry, I don't want to get too sidetracked, but I mean, it was really well. Like, it looked great. The dragons were top notch.
Everything.
Perfect. I mean, besides the episode was a bit dark, but I watched it in a dark room, so it was okay for me.
Yeah.
But it really, that logical, you wanted to just immerse yourself in the episode, but it was so hard to, because you just kept thinking, wait, why did they just do that? Why did they charge their whole cavalry at the start? I'll put them behind the lines. And I mean, the trench that, they spent, all the they like died for, barely did anything. They just crawled over it. It was just, when you compare it to Helm's Deep, and, even they've got every, boy pretty much 14 and above throwing rock, doing something to help out.
Yeah, and then the women crying, the men are getting taken away. It's just like these guys
Yeah,
like
yeah,
bare bone getting to the scraps, like getting whatever they can to fight. These like even
yeah,
Aragorn says it. These guys like we won't last
yeah,
the night, and then
yeah, yeah.
and I should die as one of them when he says
Yeah,
that,
that
and it's
was
just we had that meme as well. The guy
yeah.
looks just like, but
Reason why we're talking Elvish, yeah.
yeah. But also as well when the bridge blows up, or you also have what else that made it more like I, I feel like more tense and more rose the stakes as well. It's just Aragorn orders Legolas to take out the orc, and I'm like, yeah, Legolas has got
Yeah,
this, and he takes multiple shots, and you're like, yeah,
yeah, yeah,
and because like Legolas is this staple, like the best archer ever. He's got this, and he keeps shooting
yeah,
this orc, and then the orc gets through, and you're like, oh crap, what's gonna happen now? They're like, we Helm's Deep was built up as this fortress, and you're just like,
yeah,
we are vulnerable now. Like you're watching it, like
yeah.
I'm vulnerable now. These guys are vulnerable. Like we're screwed here.
Yeah, and it's not like each man is like worth even one Urukai. Like the
Yeah,
Urukai, Gimli's saying, the armor's thick. They're no joke. They're no orcs.
yeah,
These are half because they're half human, half orc
yeah.
hybrids, from what I remember. Yeah, so
I don't,
they're like
yeah,
these guys are tanks, and you're coming up against farm boys
yeah,
essentially. A couple of like the Royal Theoden guards who would
yeah,
probably take a couple, but I always thought like it wasn't even close to a fair fight. I mean, each man would have to take so many Urukai. And it was just like when the odds kept stacking against you, you were really like, wow, it's getting worse. Wow, it's
yeah.
getting worse. And then it makes the, reveal of Gandalf coming on the light on the hill. It's just that scene makes it so much better because the odds was
Oh,
so against him. And there's not like, there's slight foreshadowing in that, but it was still very dire
yeah.
at the start. So you really were like, whoa, look at that.
It is slightly foreshadowed, but I think once you get
Yeah,
immersed in the battle, you're like, what are these guys
that's
gonna
right.
do now? Like, what's happening? Like, once you have the final charge, and it's like when Theoden's like for the Red Dawn, and then they all charge out. Um, Sometimes I think on my first rewatch, I remember I completely forgot about the Gandalf thing, and
Right.
then
Right.
because I was so immersed, I'm like, what's gonna happen now? These guys are done. There's like about 10 of them left, going on about whatever 9,000,
Yeah.
8,000 Urukai left. Like they didn't do much damage. There was still heaps of them out there. And then when
Yeah, there
Gandalf
was.
comes with AME, and then it's just like to the king, and I'm just like,
Yeah.
I hold my hands, I
Mm.
resign. I'm like, take this movie is all for me. Like I'm just taken away by it.
Right. And um, this goes back to before, but the extended edition, you don't. I just realized now that a huge scene is when you learn kind of the tension between Faramir, Boromir, and his father, and that kind of complicated family they
Yeah,
have going. Because I remember in the normal cut, you don't even know. Well, you know that Denethor doesn't like
yeah,
Faramir, but you don't understand kind of why. And you have that behind the scene where Boromir retakes as Gilead, and he's
yeah,
seen as the hero, and he tries to credit his brother, but his dad is not
yeah. His
for it.
dad
And
straight away.
Faramir and Boromir are, in my opinion, two of the most important
Yeah,
characters
hundred
in
percent.
because they represent the downside of men. But really, Boromir did have good intentions, even though he was like the most
All
corrupt of the
all the way, he had good intentions.
intentions were pure. And he although he wanted the ring, and maybe he didn't foresee that he'd get corrupted, but he only wanted to defend his people because they were the ones copying the biggest
Yeah,
from the Mauler expansion. They're right next to it. Osgiliath was constantly under threat, and in his mind, he's just going to use it to turn the tide of the war, as he says. So,
yeah. Boromir had good intentions for the ring. That's all he wanted
yeah,
to do, turn the tide of the war. But I think he failed to understand the ramifications of what using the ring would happen, like what would happen after
yeah,
that. And I think that's why he failed to understand. And then at times in the first film as well, you had that change where he was talking to Aragorn right before he died, and as well. But I think
mm,
yeah, they are very two important characters. You see, I think Faramir becomes what Boromir should have been, like
right.
as the
He was
king of Gondor. He
right.
became, I think Faramir, I feel like became closer to what the embodiment of Aragorn, sort of.
Right.
I felt like
Yeah, no,
that's what men should be or aspire to be.
right. Yeah, like even with his like corrupt history of men, he could still put that aside and
Yeah,
say because he easily could have taken them when Frodo and Sam come within his reach, but he then realizes at that point, and he's like awesome character arc that he needs to let these guys go because that is really the only long term chance they have of defeating the Ring and
yeah.
Sauron. Yeah,
Because again, the race of men in Lord of the Rings is completely at Like it's at breaking point almost, because at the start of
Right.
the second one you have Theoden, who's like completely under the control of Saruman. That's like one of the
Yeah.
main kingdoms of men, and you also have Denethor with Gondor, and you're like, there's no hope with them until Gandalf shows
Mm.
up, obviously, and then tries to turn them over a bit as well, tries to
Yeah,
get the
yeah.
men to fight, and sort of tries to fortify the place with the third battle until like the massive reinforcements come. We'll talk about that later. That's like one of the scenes we all talk about with that, and that's like
Yeah.
you look at the third Lord of the Rings. There's so many big moments, so many big speeches, so many big battles, and it's all done well. Like nothing feels out of place in that film. That's just to me
Right,
personally.
exactly. And I just want to go back to the first film real quick. I mean, I remember the biggest thing is, the fellowship's formed, and that's actually quite a way through. It might even be
Mm.
halfway through
Yeah, yeah.
the
It's
first
not.
movie.
It's not.
Not like it happens at the
There's
start. Yeah.
actually there's not much the main thing, the fellowship. It's not actually. I think it's about halfway through, and then you spend a bit of time with them, and then obviously stuff happens that eventually breaks it up.
Yeah, right. And in that first part, when they get kind of ambushed in the that kind of forest between, I'm not sure exactly where they are in that scene, but they get kind of ambushed, and then one of the Fellowship, Boromir, it's quite far on because he's actually already had a lot of
Yeah,
his arc. But by the time that comes, and you see him get hit by the guy with the longbow, and he gets he's taking shot after shot, and he's like valiantly defending the hobbits until the last breath. But then he dies, and you're like, whoa, one of the Fellowship guys just died. Like these
yeah,
guys are not invincible. They don't have 300
yeah,
loads of plot armor. They can die, and it's like
yeah,
that really grounded it for you. And he was meant to be this champion from
yeah.
Gondor
He's
that
the king
meant to
of
represent
like,
people,
yeah,
right? Yeah, the essential yeah. So that was a big turning point, and then you go, whoa, these guys are like really risking it all,
yeah.
and yeah, I thought that was a really important scene.
Because the way they build up the fellowship when Lord Elrond says it is like, "You shall be the
Mm.
fellowship of the ring," and then the music builds up. By the way, Howard
Yeah.
Shore scores. Oh, one of the best ever
Ugh.
created. One of the best. Like, I'm Peter Jackson and Howard Shore. I've never seen think 9 people walk past a rock look so cooler.
I reckon that
Like,
whole scene,
you
that
just
scene where they're catching up to the Uruk-hai
yeah,
after they've kidnapped the hobbits is like you think
as
it'd just be
well.
some tour
Yeah,
of New Zealand essentially, but
yeah,
it is an epic scene, and
yeah,
it's really well done. The score is like
yeah.
I still years later I'll still just be humming the fields
Oh,
of Pelennor.
we all do it. We all do it.
Yeah, it's just,
Like when you
it's too good.
But when the fellowship is built, this is my I remember like first watch. The fellowship is built. I'm like, all right, these are the guys that are gonna take me. These are the guys I'm gonna follow on the journey. This is gonna be the core group and gonna be with them together. And
Yeah,
these are my heroes. And then when they get split up, I'm just like,
yeah,
and then you see how the story like diverges across different paths, and then they all eventually meet up together, which is like
mm,
that's how I love about it. But with when they go down the different paths, nothing ever really comes out of place, and like the pacing is right, because I feel like
perfect. Yeah,
sometimes some like whatever the men do or whatever different like the different story paths happen with certain characters has consequences as well in the other ones as well in the story,
mm,
which
right.
is what I feel as well. Because like eventually the Merry and Pippin, they get split up, and then they go with the entries. That has consequences on Saruman as well, because I
Right,
don't think he would have expected for the Danetree Forest, I think it was, for them to turn on them, and that also helps.
right.
That also helps that also in turn helps the Helm's Deep battle as well, because it takes out Isengard, which is a big factor.
Yeah, yeah, a huge factor. I mean, honestly, that I always loved as a kid watching the how Isengard's production of the
Yeah,
Uruk-hai went. They're making the helmets and the swords, and it was that really gave him like a backing. I felt like in
also
other ones the enemies are kind
yeah,
of just like bad guys, and they're
it
just kind of over
also
there.
also
No
adds
one,
to
but
the world building as well. I feel like those little
right,
nuances as well. It just shows you like what's going on behind the scenes as well. The intense like how these guys are getting produced, the mass production of the orcs, everything, their armor, and then that really adds to like especially the theme is like dun 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 dun, dun. And you're just like oh, these guys are real great.
yeah,
That's why I feel like compared when the in the Mauler video as well, when they compared it to the Avengers Endgame battle scene, any battle in Lord of the Rings, I feel like even the Helm's Deep battle and the battle for Minas Tirith, with the Avengers Endgame battle, it was I'm not gonna lie, I fanboyed out in the cinema, especially when they
yeah,
all came
same.
back and the theme happened, and I was just like, yeah, these guys. it's done. But that's the problem. I felt like it was done. I'm like, these guys are winning from
Right,
here. There's no losing. Like, you had a bit of
right,
moments where Thanos was just like had the upper hand, but I'm like, there's no way they're losing from here. It's too big of a moment. That's why I feel like there
exactly.
was no stakes
It
in it.
was from there on the movie was set really. I mean,
And it,
oh, again, but
and
yeah,
I feel
Iron
like
Man, it's
yeah, but like I feel like CGI as well. With in a day and age of film where everything's just like, oh, we can easily CGI this. So when you look at the behind the scenes of the Avengers Endgame battle and you see them running, it's just all on like a blue screen or like they got a green screen behind them. With Lord of the Rings, when you look at behind the scenes and how much armor they built and where it was filmed, the battles and the process that goes behind it, like I remember one of the costume designers talking about like they had to create unique armor for each individual person as well, not just to make it the same
mm,
bland thing. And then that's what happens when I look at the Avengers Endgame battle, and you also look at the Endgame battle in terms of the placement of characters. I feel like there's a
mm,
scene in the Avengers Endgame battle where you get all
yeah,
the women together, and I'm not gonna hate on it, but it's just like I'm gonna
yeah.
hate on it. All right, it's just like it's just I've got nothing against powerful women. Make a powerful female characters. I love some of the superheroes in Marvel like that are women. Some of my
Yeah,
favorites. But when you have like a specific battle that's going down with the fate of the universe, and then you just cut to a scene where all the women are randomly together, it's like
yeah,
that's just because the script wanted them to be there. They came. You're telling me all the women came from their own individual battle positions to fly over specifically to where
yeah,
Peter Parker was and Captain Marvel was just to defend her. Like
yeah.
you
It
don't
was
see that
so,
in
it
Lord of the
was
Rings.
so forced. It was so
Yeah,
pushed in. It just felt like, all right, we know what you're doing here. Like,
yeah,
it's not like we're going to get taken down or whatever. But I mean, you compare that kind of female arc, and then you compare it to someone like Eowyn,
yeah,
who has the best like female character arc, redemption kind of thing. She's people make fun of her for wanting to drone the Rohirrim in the charge because she's a woman, she doesn't belong there. Even when they get ambushed in the second movie by the Warg Riders, go defend the people, like we'll handle
yeah.
this kind of thing. The whole movie, she's been turned away from a real battle, which is really what she wants. And she's not, invincible either. She goes up against
The Night
the
King.
tool, and no man can kill me. And
Yeah.
then all of a sudden, she hits you with the light, man. Like
I
that's
felt
the
like
best way to get
that
that.
that was earned. That was earned. I feel like that was built
Hundred
up her
percent,
arc over the second and
really
third
well
movie
done.
because constantly I feel like she always loved Théoden. Obviously, it's her uncle, but I feel
Yeah,
like she always wanted to go to the next step, and I felt like she wanted to be one of the men. She wanted to help fight and defend this. That's her character. That's what she's always wanted to be.
uh,
And then I feel
yeah,
like
exactly.
Aragorn helps her with that sometimes as well. Obviously, you have the I don't know. I feel like not the stereotypes, but like you also have like the cooking scene where Aragorn's just like, yeah, yeah, it's good food, good food. I feel like
Yeah,
that's a good
yeah.
love. But that's not her. Also, she like
Mm.
obviously she can't like the joke was she can't cook, but that's not her. She's not meant to be this like maiden or housewife typical thing. She's this warrior, and that's what I love about
Yeah,
Eowyn as well.
yeah. She's built up. You know what I mean? She's not just this Deus Ex manic, like
Yeah,
machina character that comes and saves her uncle. I mean, she doesn't even end up saving him. Not that she could have, but I'm just saying, like,
yeah,
it's the perfect redemption
yeah,
within the atmosphere that she was in, and I thought it was really well done.
yeah. Eowyn, I have no doubts about. Even Liv Tyler's Arwen.
Mm.
She's amazing as well.
Yeah,
She's really good.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. Really good. Um, I wanted to move into the third movie now and talk
yeah,
about the because that is like iconic, and I always think about that. If anyone hasn't watched it, I'll kind of show
yeah.
them a teaser of that scene, and they'll be like, "Whoa, that was epic." I want
I still go
to
and revisit that scene on YouTube on the daily or weekly, and I have a comment in there as well where you're just engaging with all the Lord of the Rings fan. Like I took shots at I like Avengers Endgame, but I took shots. I'm like people say this is better than Avengers Endgame, and like I got a decent amount of likes on that comment. And you just engage with all the Lord of the Rings fans, and it's
right.
just like even the comments of that video and the amount of views it still has to this day. In the comments, you see the comments, people are uploading like weekly comments on that still. Like the comments are
Mm,
not like very long ago. Even though the video was
right.
uploaded a
Exactly.
while ago, the comments people are still coming back and saying this is still the greatest ever. It's yet to be beat. And I think
Yeah.
that just stands to show you how much the Lord of the Rings fandom has just
Yeah.
grown and also shown that these movies are the staple for what
Right.
other movies should be today.
Should be.
But it's
Yeah, I
hard
mean, every
to.
time it's clearly stood the test of time because every battle, it's like, is it better than Helm's Deep? Is it better
Yeah,
than the Cavalry
you're
in the
always
third movie?
comparing that.
It's like the grade
Yeah,
A premium standard
yeah,
of fighting and that kind of combat.
yep,
But yeah, that scene still gives me goosebumps when I rewatch it. I'm like,
100%.
whoa, I've seen it like a stupid amount of times. I'm talking like about hundreds and hundreds of times
Yeah,
now, and I just watch it again. And I my personal favorite though is rewatching it with someone who's never seen it before.
yeah,
I
hundred
love.
percent.
I'm running out of friends to kind of do that.
Oh, I'm trying
But
to think. I'm trying to think. We got one friend that whenever we talk about Lord of the Rings, he says, "Oh, wait, you guys talking about Star Trek?" And it doesn't trigger us, but it's just like it's a good running
it's
joke.
funny.
And I
We'll
just like,
convert him one day. We'll
yeah,
convert him.
yeah, I've had a lot of. One of my friends actually said he's watched The Hobbits and he likes The
Yeah,
Hobbit, but
yeah,
he's tried watching Lord of the Rings, the first one, and he couldn't get through it. So I'm just like, oh, I don't know about that. Like, the best thing is trying to get someone to watch Lord of the Rings the first time. And when we just recently watched it a couple months ago, and the
yeah.
Theoden scene, I hadn't seen him about a year and a half up to that point. I shed a tear
Mm.
at the charge scene.
Yeah.
It's just
Yeah, no,
like
it's epic.
unbelievable. It's just like I
Yeah.
want to die with you guys. I don't care. Like it's like a
Yeah.
final battle. Like I want to die here with you guys. This is just like you
Yeah.
see
10 out
how
of
far
10.
men has come as well from the
Yeah.
downfall of the first movie. You're like, finally, these guys
Right.
are standing up, and then that battle's overcome. But then you see how many of them's left when they go to march on Helm's Deep. You're just like, oh come on, man, we just beat 10,000 orcs almost. We got another 10,000. It's just like, but then they still
Yeah.
charge at him. It's just like I want to die again with you guys. It's just like
Yeah.
I want to be with you.
Yeah.
But that's what I love about it.
Right. And going back to that, how the men are kind of the the bad race, not the bad race, the easily manipulated race, comes back to the ghosts and how he frees them. I mean, Aragon essentially disbands the whole Rohirrim in that
Yeah,
scene, and even they feel like a morale loss because they're like, wow, he's like one of the best fighters, best leaders, possibly the king of Gondor, and he's just
yeah,
gone on this side quest essentially. But then he comes back, and on his that is such a good scene. When the
yeah,
ghost's sword hits Aragon's sword that
yeah,
was reforged, and it's just such a it's really like the
yeah.
turning point of the men arc. You're like, whoa, they really are like true to their word, and they will keep their oath, and they are humbled by
And
their oaths. Yeah,
the extended has more scenes with the army of the dead as well, like inside the caves and stuff. There's a bit cut out in
yeah,
the
yeah,
theatrical, but also you got to that point where Aragorn leaves. You essentially one of the guys who you thought was dead, and now he's back. He came to Helm's Deep, and it's just he was the staple at Helm's Deep as well. When he came back, you're like, Aragorn's still alive. Let's go. A bit of a morale boost there, and then
yeah,
you just see him leave the eve before battle, and then
yeah,
I could see that. I think when he left, I could have seen like more of the Rohirrim leaving as well, because like you got
mm,
your basically the heir of Gondor, Isildur's heir basically leaving. But
mm,
I think that stands
yeah,
again to testament how good Theoden's character is as well, and how they'll support him as well when he says, I think don't worry, more will come as well when they're talking about we got too few men.
yeah. Right, like less than half of
Yeah,
what we expected, and all that. Yeah, yeah. That scene was like a real humbling scene because even with they're going up against thousands and
yeah,
thousands of orcs, and even Theoden's going like, yo, this is less than half
yeah,
of what I expected. Yeah, and it's like when the leadership is like
yeah,
hanging low, it really gets you going, especially because you've just seen how in the Helm's Deep battle how vulnerable they really were,
yeah,
even with the governments, and it's like they are not, you know, some plot armor thing, and
yeah,
uh, like in the battle, even when the elephants come
yeah,
and they turn that battle, that scene is just like that, and it's like only slightly foreshadowed that scene. Like you kind of, I kind of forgot about him by the
yeah,
time they came out. I was like, whoa, oh yeah, they were the ones that
yeah.
in the Rangers ambush, and yeah, it was really like all brought in, like nothing was really left unturned.
Yeah.
You know?
Like I feel like in the story, our heroes have like to us it seems like, or like to us it seems like big victories, like the Helm's Deep big victory.
Hmm.
But then it's cut short again. But then like the Battle of Minas Tirith is all, and then they have that charge with the him. You're like, that's it, we're winning. That's it, we got the upper hand. And then the Oliphants come. You're like, oh come on, man. It's just like the tides keep turning, and you don't know who's gonna win. Like so
Yeah, you
at
know.
points you don't know who's gonna win until
Hmm.
Aragorn comes with basically he comes basically with the in-game cheat with the army of the dead. It just does the hacks, the life
In-game
hacks, and
cheat.
just like wipes out the whole team. It's just the whole army
Yeah,
basically. But I feel like up until that point, it was already grueling enough. Like we did, like the men were already
yeah,
beaten
yeah.
down. It's just like finally Aragorn came because it's just like even though the Rohirrim came, you still felt like it was at a disadvantage even with when the Oliphaunts came.
Exactly right. And I always wondered. This is just a bit of a side thing, but I always wondered if the army of the dead actually could be defeated. So although they were ghosts
Yeah,
and the sort of kind of get through, were they actually invincible unless they were fighting like the captain of God? I thought that would have been something that would have at least made the battle
yeah,
because when the army of the dead come and they kind of just sweep through the city, it's a cool scene. But I would have liked to have some sort of vulnerability.
yeah,
Maybe like yeah, even the Ents when they come and they seem to like save the day, they can still be lit on fire or
yeah,
chopped down. Still have that kind of vulnerability, and that just grounds it a bit more because I
yeah,
still remember I would have liked to see more action, more
yeah.
battle. And with the army of the dead,
They
they
were
still should have
overpowered.
right. They were overpowered. Is exactly right, and I think that kind of
Yeah,
vulnerability should have been in there. But it's still like a very it's one of the best ways to
yeah.
activate the cheat because it was like well
Yeah.
fought, well earned, and it was perfectly lined up with his lineage and it worked well.
But again, even though the army did, they're seen as like this overpowered thing, and we look at them, I was like, they're so cool and stuff like that. But uh, I can't remember. I haven't. They say about how they were cursed, and I think was it Isildur who cursed
Mm.
them because they didn't they
Yeah,
fled from
it was
battle.
some Gondor king I
Yeah,
think, and he cursed them because they were essentially cowards and they
yeah.
hid under the hill.
They again,
Then
even though got like the Gondor lineage as well, that's portrayed as men of coward. You also have the army of the dead who are also men of cowards. Like there's no
yeah,
good there's no good reputation for the name of men in Lord of the Rings, and then you have Aragorn. It's like
exactly right.
finally someone
Yeah,
who I can back, and then it's just you have Aragorn and then Boromir in the first one. They're sort of like the antithesis of each other. Like
exactly right. Yeah,
Aragorn's what
and
Aragorn's like
yeah,
what men should be, and then Boromir, you're like, oh come on, man, not this again. I don't want you to fall into this trap. And then when he dies like a hero, obviously, like you have that fighting back. It sort of redeems him a bit. You're like, there was
right.
always that good in him, and that's what
Yeah,
I really appreciate.
yeah, yeah, and 100%, and that is once again like it's really a turning point of the race of men. The whole movie is like the whole trilogy is like why the race of
Yeah,
men were as powerful as they were. It kind of redeems them. Yeah, yeah. So
no, and then
you get
especially you have like when Theoden says as well when Aragorn leaves, he's like, "We shall meet them in battle nonetheless." Like it's just like
mm,
whether we die or not, we're going to meet these bastards on the way. We don't care. We're gonna go and fight
yeah,
them no matter what. Like it's
yeah.
what's
It's a good scene.
we're gonna put
It
up
really
one
is.
final stand, whether we lose or not. I think he's like his mindset was we're fighting. No, like no matter what, whatever the outcome is, we'll have make one final stand for mankind. Obviously,
Mm,
that's they had to do it.
yeah,
Everything was at stake. That's why the stakes are so good in Lord of the Rings, and it's so investing. It's just like when the men go
yeah,
to battle. That's why I feel like I'm going to battle with them. Like that's what I enjoy.
yeah. It really is good. One of my favorite scenes is actually in that battle is when Grund starts breaching through the
Yeah,
gate at Gondor, and they're all just lining up like they're sprinting down to get to the lower level so they can defend the courtyard. And when they get in there, and even Gandalf's like, "Yo, that's a lot of
yeah.
trolls."
You get it. Whatever comes through that gate.
Yeah, instead, and they come out, decked out,
Yeah,
three armor plates,
because like
and they just
at that point, Gandalf had come back from the dead. You're like, Gandalf's got this no matter what. They got Gandalf. Even I think I think it's Pippin. I think it's Pippin. He
I
says
always get it
we
mixed up.
yeah. He's like we got the White Wizard. That's got to count for something. And then even
Right.
Gandalf gives him that look where he's just like, yeah, man, I can't do much. Like I'm only one person. Like it
I don't know.
does
The
it
armor's
does
pretty thick, bro.
it does. But like because
Mm,
you also have Gandalf. Like he came back from the dead. He like that's it. He's beaten Saruman now. He's like this guy's gonna this guy they surely got his backing. That means surely he's gonna come up with some like last minute like for example last minute goal or something like sort of like that
right.
analogy where it's just last minute magic trick where he's gonna do something and just sort of defeat the whole army. But that's not the case.
Right.
Even when the Nazgul king comes, if essentially beats him, breaks his staff,
Yeah.
and there's two
Yeah.
alternate cuts of that. In the
Yeah. Right.
theatrical, it's different when the Rohan horn blows. I think it's at different points. I can't remember. I think in
Yeah,
one of
I
them
don't
it's when the
think you
Nazgul
see
King.
that scene at all. Yeah,
It's when the
I
Witch
don't
King
think
of
you see
Angmar
where
has his
he's. Yeah.
sword
Yeah.
up. I think
Mm,
he has his sword up and he's about to essentially kill
yeah.
Gandalf. But I can't remember what the theatrical was, or if it's the
I
other
don't
way
think
around.
the. I think the theatrical one happens. I think it's after like this kind of panning through the city of them
Yes.
retreating to a higher level, and then you hear the horn, and then it's like a morale boost.
Yeah.
Whereas extended, you see, Gandalf essentially getting clapped,
Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
and then that's when it happens there. Then he's like,
Yeah.
all right, I got
Because
other issues to attend
If
to.
they lose Gandalf there, who's there to support the men? Because
Yeah, exactly.
Denethor's a little wuss. He's done.
Yeah,
He's done nothing. Like essentially,
yeah,
oh, he was. I feel like his character was portrayed so well that he was meant to be hated, obviously, but it was
yeah,
so good. It's just like at each point it was just frustrating. Every time it cut to him, you're just like, come on, man. Because like I feel
yeah,
like you
exactly right.
followed these men. You followed all these men in your journey, and you're just like, yes, these are the men I want to follow. And then it cuts to Denethor. It's like, no, this is what I want. Don't want you to be. I don't want you to be this guy. Like,
Yeah, he's like the trough of the men.
yeah,
He's like the trough of what the men should be, and then
yeah.
from there, it kind of just picks up with
This
the
arrogant
good.
thinks he knows it all. I'm the best. Whatever I say is like he's sort of ignorant, doesn't know whatever. It's very one sided thinking from him.
Yeah, yeah, and so we'll wrap up the third movie because I know
Yeah.
the end always kind of confused me. At least me when I was young, I was like, wait, where they going? Like I was always confused.
Oh, the
So
Undying Lands.
right,
Yeah.
exactly. That is something that they probably should have elaborated on with 12 and something hours of
Yeah.
extended
But like
cut time. They should have at least
you,
brought it up a little bit.
you get the ending that happens with Aragorn at the top of Minas Tirith with the tree and the wedding,
Mm.
and you're like, that's it. But then there's like three other endings. There's still like half an hour, 40 minutes left, and
Yeah, we gotta
but
go
I'm
into
not
all the other
hating on it.
stuff.
I love it. I absolutely love it. But I can see how to other
Yeah.
people it's just like, oh come on, wrap it up. But for me,
Yeah.
that's Aragorn wrapped up. You still have all the other characters left. That's why,
Right.
and then they tie it in again with Bilbo's journey as well, and they wrap up his journey as well. That's what I love about the ending. And the ending always
Yeah.
brings tears to my eyes because it's just like I can relate to it. It's just about life in general as well.
Right.
But I
Yeah,
feel like
it's going to be.
I haven't read the books, and this is big of me. I really want to read them one day, and I
Mm.
just want to read them all in one go. But I've read segments of the books from YouTube videos of people who have broken it down and explained other lore videos as well. And Tolkien's world is just so vast and depth. It's just like there's so much more to what's happening as well during
Yeah.
even the battles. I know there's like other battles in the north happening with other dwarven kingdoms. That's why they couldn't come and help at the time
Right.
of the Battle of Minas Tirith happened. So that's why that's happening. So that's how
Mm.
big the world is at the time. And I feel like Peter Jackson did his best to keep everything in. That's why I'm like,
Yeah,
I felt like
exactly right.
maybe he didn't have enough room to explain what the Undying Lands was. But I feel like
Right.
they allude to it in the first movie as well.
Yeah.
The
Well, when they're
first or
talking
second
about,
with Arwen when she
yeah,
leaves them in the
yeah,
forest and she comes back to her father Lord Elrond because they're
yeah,
going to the
yeah.
Undying
That's
Lands.
yeah, right. Exactly. And that's when you kind of get the first glimpse, and it kind of comes. Everything
Yeah,
that gets mentioned gets tied up, and that's why it is like the ending seems long. But had the ending, not have Frodo leaving or something like that, you're like, wait, what about his like, his wound that would never heal? What happens to Frodo?
yeah,
You wouldn't like you'd have all these questions that so many series and movies nowadays have, and you never get that kind of closure. And that's why Lord of the Rings is such a complete trilogy. Like
yeah,
it really does feel like everything that is started has an ending, and it comes around full
yeah.
circle by the end of the third movie.
It's not like the latest Star Wars trilogy. We'll break down in a later video because I have my thoughts on that. Let's just say it's 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 okay. That's all I'm gonna say.
Mostly disappointing.
Most yeah, just say that's the
Mostly disappointing.
kind
There were some good
that's
things.
the most kind way to put it. Mostly disappointing.
Yeah. Mm.
Retcon the whole thing. But basically, you don't need to. I feel like with that, they were coming out with new tweets every day after the Rise of Skywalker saying, "Oh, did you know this thing in the Rise of Skywalker meant this, and it was Ray. This happened to Ray because of this, or this artifact was taken from this," and they're trying to explain it through expanded graphic novels and stuff. That's how they're expanding Star Wars, and they're trying to fix what the damage has been done already. You can't fix it. You
Yeah.
try to put it after because like the I feel like the interest has been lost after that. And Lord of the
Right.
Rings, there's nothing ever done with that. There's no
Mm.
expanded graphic novels or comics after what's done is done. It's the story. It explains so well.
Exactly right. And the good thing with Lord of the Rings, I feel, is there's so many things. Like personally, I'm not like too keen on the Hobbit. It doesn't come near the
We'll
main
talk about
trilogy.
the Hobbit in about the next 5 minutes after we wrap up the third movie.
Okay,
If
all
you
right, all right, I'll leave it for them. But yeah, the ending for Lord of the Rings is the best ending of any trilogy there is. It is the
yeah
most complete. It pretty much wraps up everything. I remember after what happens to them?
yeah
Faramir and Eowyn, they get their kind of romance thing. Everything comes like
yeah
everything comes together, and
yeah.
it's very fitting. It's a
yeah.
very
It's just like I've I cried when the Rohirrim charged. I cried when Aragorn said, "We stand, men of the West," and then when you see when he says for Frodo, you see
Mm,
you see the first people that charge are Merry and Pippin after Aragorn, obviously,
right.
and it just shows you that everyone's in this battle. The whole Middle Earth like depends on this battle. The stakes are high, and it shows you like that even the two littlest hobbits are fearless. Like
Yeah,
all this
yeah. It really
time,
puts aside
all this
the
time
race,
they're
and it's
trying to
just
put
like
these little hobbits are the first that charge, and then even though they get overrun, obviously, because they're like 3 foot Beetlejuice size,
yeah.
but like
Beetlejuice. Uh,
shout out Beetlejuice. um, yeah, even though they get overrun, it just shows you they always that's it. They just
yeah.
this is it. And
Mm,
when the music plays and it's like "Da-na-na, da-na-na, da-na," and they
yeah.
all charge, and then everyone just roars, and then it's just like there's nothing better than that.
Mm.
It's just and so
And
I cry
with
there, and then you get the happy ending when Frodo wakes up
mm.
in Rivendell, and then Gandalf, they're all laughing, and it's just like, yes, this is it. And then you cry again when they get split up. It's just like they did all that, and then Sam loses obviously his best friend, man. And then it's just like
Yeah.
more crying. And it's like, and when Gandalf says, "Oh, death is just another path," I believe, and it's just like, oh,
Mm.
that's it. This is too emotional, man.
Yeah.
It's got
Yeah.
dramatic action, everything, just everything about it. It's just it
Mm.
connects to
A
my
good
life as well. Like,
right. A good scene with the attention to detail. I mean, it's just riddled throughout. There's like heaps of ones where with when Boromir passes, Aragorn wears his
yeah,
called the wrist bands, the armor cuffling things. He wears them for the through the end of the movie,
yeah,
even in the final scene, to show he's like and it's just they don't mention that, but it's just there
yeah,
for the rewatches and all that. And there's the theme that plays when Aragorn promises Frodo that he'll kind of be with him to the end in the first movie, The Fellowship. That score
yeah,
that plays in the background actually picks up when he charges and says for
yeah,
Frodo at the end, and
yeah,
it's that perfect like synchronization of
yeah.
the score with the callback for Frodo. I mean, he
I'm with
hasn't
you to
seen
the end. This is the
right.
Fellowship.
He's really the character that never loses hope. I
Yeah,
mean, throughout the whole series, even Legolas has like feints of hope
yeah,
every now and then. Helm's Deep in, he's like, what are we going to do against 10,000 in Elvish, of course,
yeah,
but he's like, what can we do against so much? And Gimli really, not loses hope, but he's very, he's daunted on when
yeah,
he finds out that Moria has been,
yeah,
overrun. But Aragorn really holds it out
yeah.
to the end.
I,
That's
lo-
why he is
yeah.
the character to follow.
I love Gimli, man. He's just always down to scrap. It's just like
Yeah.
put orcs in front of me, I'm just down to scrap. It's just like that
Yeah.
character. You always get like a little morale boost yourself from Gimli. Like no matter what the odds, the guy just charges you everything.
Mm. He's actually the perfect comedic relief
Yeah,
of the whole movie. And there's a lot of scenes like that. Like even in the scene at the end when they charge a Frodo, like you
yeah,
said, with the hobbits a bit smaller, they get overrun. I always
yeah,
still laugh at that. And it's like little scenes of Gimli that have that perfect comedic relief.
yeah.
Don't keep it too serious.
Even
And,
like, cause like I feel like with some movies, I think the Marvel movies do it a lot. When it's like a serious battle with the villain, they put like a big comedic thing, and it sort of like breaks up the tension a bit. But in
yeah,
Lord of the
yeah.
Rings, it's just subtle and like it suits it. Like I like when they're counting how many kills they have. Like I just like that little stuff. It's sort of like oh that's just the little like it's just something nice to think of in the midst of all that's going on, all the massacre, everything. Even like they're outnumbered, they still like got that little rivalry. They're counting that. I like that. That's the little
100%.
comedy I
Yeah.
like. Lord of the Rings is not meant for comedy, so
Right.
anyone who watches that don't go in for like, oh, I'm gonna have a laugh here and there. No.
Yeah, exactly right. All right, Hobbit time.
I just I just want to discuss one of my favorite quotes. I think
Okay.
Gandalf says as well is like, all we must decide is what to do with the time that is given to us, and
Yeah.
that resonates big with me because it's just like, again, it connects with me on a personal level, or like in general with anyone on a personal
Mm.
level, that you only get one life, and within one life there's a limited amount of time. You don't know how long your life's gonna be. You don't know whether it's gonna be cut short tomorrow, cut short in a week, cut short in 80 years time. But whatever, how much time
Mm.
you have, you got to make the most of it. That's essentially what he's saying.
Mm. Yeah, it's a real humbling part
Yeah.
of the trilogy. He's just sitting there and the odds are dire. I'm pretty sure that's when they're like holding off the trolls from the second level or third level from
Mm.
Gondor. And that's like, even in the most dire things, he's just like, we gotta do it. Oh, that's another quote. But it's
Yeah.
it's a same kind of scenario.
Even when
It's
he says like death is just another path. No, it does not end
that's what
here.
I'm thinking of.
Death is just
Yeah.
another path. When he's talking to Pippin, yeah, he's just like,
Yeah.
that's it. Yeah.
Mm.
And then it shows you again because Gandalf has like sort of been revived as well. He knows about it. Like
Mm.
death is just part of life. That's it. It's just another
That's
path. What
right.
lies beyond as well.
Yeah. Yeah, that really is a good quote.
All right.
That's a cool quote,
In
that one.
conclusion, Lord of the Rings is the greatest of all time. That's it.
100%.
We just say
Die on the
50
hill with that
minutes.
one.
We just say 50 minutes. That's taken to the grave. But like, I
Yeah.
mean, like we all collect Lord of the Rings collectibles as well. That I have like swords and everything, and it's just like one thing, big bucket listing is to go to New Zealand and visit the places, and
Mm.
that's
We'll do it
something
together.
that 100%. We ride now. I'll take a horse.
Take
I
a
don't
horse.
care. But that's
Ride a sheep.
like even not to visit Hobbiton, because one of the things that let me down about Hobbiton when my friend went, you actually can't go inside the houses. It's just an outside thing, and I'd rather go to the actually natural locations that they film, like the mountains and stuff. So that's
Yeah.
because I remember like there's one aerial shot as when in the second movie when they're running, and you got the famous theme playing at that time. Obviously, Aragorn had the broken toe. We all know how we got that. Every time you watch the movie, that's it. He had the broken toe. I believe Orlando Bloom had a broken rib or cracked rib, and then Gimli's character I think he had a dislocated knee, and they were all still running
Yeah.
at the time. And
Yeah.
I was watching something funny behind the scenes with Sean Bean. He actually had a phobia of flying. I think it was flying. Well, he hated helicopters. He couldn't fly. And there was one time in the morning he woke up before all the actors and then walked to the mountain set by himself.
really?
He
I
went
didn't know
and
that.
met them there via walking. He couldn't catch a
Sad.
helicopter. So even he was doing the actual journey before even like everything started. Like that
That's
just shows
funny,
you
man.
like even the cast and everyone was invested in it. Like what they would do to film it. And they were
Yeah.
on location, and these are not easy places to film. It's cold and you're in high places as well. That's even the scene, the aftermath of the Battle of Minas Tirith, the Oliphant. That was actually one of the biggest props ever created in a film set. Or I believe it still is. They built an actual
Oh,
Oliphant.
right.
So it just shows you
Yeah.
how much effort they put through it as well to build this set.
Yeah.
Obviously they use blue screen here and there, but as well it's just like
Mm.
we're gonna try and make this as real as possible. We are building Tolkien's world. That's what I love.
Yeah.
Lord of the Rings
Yeah.
is the goat. That's it.
The goat, hands down.
All right.
All right.
You can start on Hobbit.
So I'll say, so I have mixed feelings about The Hobbit. I actually haven't, like, I've seen it a couple times, but I haven't seen it that recently.
Definitely.
But I had a mate that I essentially convinced to watch The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit thing, and he is like, he essentially says they're about the same, and I find,
I see some people in YouTube comments rate Hobbit even above Lord of the Rings, or say like these movies are just as good. And I'm just like, I don't know
Yeah.
about that one, but like, yeah, like I don't know about that one.
oh,
But
to each their own at the end of the day. And
yeah,
there are
obviously
some.
everyone has their own
some-
opinion, is entitled to their own opinion.
Oh, and you know how we're talking about extended cuts of 4? The extended cut of The Hobbit is like so important. It is so important.
Which one? The first one or the second one?
The third as well. Yeah, honestly, all of them. The third scene, like,
Because the second
you
one
see-
leaves out something big.
yeah,
Yeah, like in terms of like, because the thing they leave out. Okay, spoilers for everyone. That the second,
Yeah, I was about
the
to say.
second, the Hobbit extended edition for the Desolation of Smaug leaves out what happens to I'm thinking Aragorn because of what's just talking about Lord of the Rings, but what happens to Thorin's father, and they also hint about it in the first one, as well. And then in the second one starts with a scene with that's set before the events of the Hobbit when Gandalf meets Thorin, and he's like,
Mm.
"There's been rumors. My father's been seen roaming the wilds of Dublin," and then
Right.
so they foreshadow it sort of there, and they all right. We begin with Thorin's father, so we might get a payoff. We get no payoff with
Yeah.
it, except in the extended
Right.
cut. When I first watched it, I was
Yeah.
like, "Oh, what the heck? That's there."
Mm.
I felt like that should have been included. That's
Yeah.
my opinion.
100%. And I think what in the third one, the Battle of the Five Armies, that when the dwarves and elves first meet in the theatrical cut, you do see tension, but
Yeah.
nothing ever actually comes of it. But in the extended, they go to there for a short time, they go into battle, and it makes that
Yeah.
alliance when the dwarves kind of line up and then the
They
elves
jump
jump
over.
over.
That's cool. That's cool. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes it so much more punctual. Like
Yeah.
they really did put their differences aside to take on this army, and they're proper fighting as
Yeah.
well in the cut, and it's also a good battle. Like a bit of a charge there, and I think that was pretty necessary. And I feel sorry to the directors and all the CGI workers that had to spend hours on that and didn't even get into the theatrical.
Well, The Hobbit, I think, was originally meant to be 2 films only, and then I think halfway
Right.
shooting the second one, they made it into 3.
Yeah.
But I actually quite enjoy the first Hobbit. I
Yeah.
don't have many issues with the first Hobbit, and I really love the theme and everything about it. The second one, even though it left you on a little bit of a cliffhanger, the second one, when I went and watched the second one, I remember seeing it with you in the cinemas, and I saw that twice in 2 days. I saw with you, and then I watched it the day after. I loved it. I was taking when I saw Smaug in the cinemas, I was just like, "This is unbelievable." And we watched it in 3D as well. I was just like, "Wow!" And then when I rewatch it now, the ending looks like a game to me. It does not hold up very well. Even the third one, the CGI. That's what happens when they went all CGI. Compared to Lord of the Rings looks better than most movies today still. But when you compare it as well as to The Hobbit, you think The Hobbit was like not made sort of made before. It looks like a video game, some of it. And
Yeah, it does.
You look at the elves in the Battle of the Five Armies as well, when they have a panning shot of them, and you can tell they're duplicated faces, and they're like the same face over and over again, and it's just like they look animated as well, and it's just like, come on, man.
There's
like,
no grounding,
yeah.
It doesn't make you feel like you're there. Like it may have been cool, but it is in the end of the day, it's just 2 CGI armies fighting, and we're gonna compare it again to Helm's Deep, but seeing like you've got real people, you can see the fear in their faces. Even the Uruk-hai are essentially people in masks, but it gives them that brutality that you wouldn't get from CGI, and you just maybe we'll be there one day where you can CGI that kind of depth and emotion from an army, but it really didn't make you feel like you were there. There were some stakes, but it didn't feel like if they lost, this would be really bad. You just couldn't see them losing. You know what I mean? Like, well, they'll be safe somehow. You know what I mean? And that kind of undercuts the stakes, the whole fight.
There's definitely some cool moments in The Hobbit. I'm not gonna deny it. Like, even though the
thanks.
CGI in the second one doesn't stand up quite as bit, and some of the stuff is really quite obvious and animated, there's a lot of fun to be had at the end of Smaug, and I think Martin Freeman definitely carries that series. As Bilbo, 100%. He's so good as if there's one thing I can think about The Hobbit, he's a great, fantastic Bilbo.
Yeah, and 100%. But I will say something with The Hobbit. I felt like the characters, but especially the dwarves, their character development was not where it needed to be, in my opinion. Like,
you had a couple that were built, I think.
Yeah, like you knew a couple of their names, but you didn't know all of them.
Maybe.
Whereas the Fellowship,
Fellowship, you knew all of them, But I feel
like, oh, he's that one.
Yeah.
Maybe because the
Fellowship was split as well. The dwarves, you're always with them, and you still, I don't think I could name most of them. For Philly, Keely, they were Thorin's nephews. Yeah, Thorin, Balin was quite a bit, but then Dwalin as well. He was the big muscle, as well. He was alright. But they weren't really built up. A lot of them were just tacked along, I felt.
Yeah, and where the one dies, the one that has the relationship with the with the elf. He dies.
They both pass away. They both get killed.
You're like, right, yeah, true. Do you know when he's like, oh no, not, and you don't even know his name. It's like you don't even know who he was. It has that gap that just have it. I thought that was one of the biggest flaws. Just maybe they, I don't know, could put less
Yeah.
dwarves, or I'm not sure what it would have been, but yeah.
Like there obviously the Hobbit looks beautiful at points as well. Like even
Right.
though, but like there's some certain things as well with how like I feel like at the start of the third one as well, Smaug could have easily wiped out Lake Town in about 2 seconds, and they sort of like
Yeah.
drag it on. He's just like he's taking breaths of like in rows. He's just like
Yeah.
I'll do like one line here. It's like mowing the lawn. He's like I'll do this first, and then I'll come back to this lane. And it's just like, bro, you could have had that done in like and when the way they built up Smaug in the second one, he's like sort of intelligent as well, but then
Mm.
this guy is just like sort of yeah. I don't know how it happens in the book because I can't remember. I've read the Hobbit book, but I can't remember how exactly it happens. But I'm pretty sure it didn't go down like the movie. He was toying with them. I don't know,
Yeah.
but I don't know how that went with that.
Yeah. Well, it's still worth the watch though, The Hobbit. It
Oh,
really is still
100%.
worth.
There's enjoyment with it. I feel like the theme in the first one's amazing. There's certain moments where they charge, and in the third movie, when Thorin sort of has that redemption when he comes to that realization, like that catharsis, where he's like, "Oh crap, I'm just becoming this like, I'm exactly coming like my grandfather."
Greedy dwarf.
Yeah, greedy dwarf. Like, oh, what else? The stereotype. And
It is
then
what it is,
yeah,
man.
it is. And he's like, "Will you follow me one last time?" And the music plays, and then they all charge out. I'm like, that was a cool scene. Where it's like to the king,
Yeah,
and then that was really good as well. But
yeah,
Azog's not even the main villain in the book. He was killed, I think, many years before, 100 years before as well. And then Legolas was brought back for fan service. I think Tario, is it Tario? Yeah, she's not even in the book as well. But yeah, I still enjoy the Hobbits. It's just like sometimes I feel like the CGI does get to me. I feel like that's the main thing that gets to me. I have no issue with the story. Like I'm invested in the story, like the mountain,
yeah.
everything, treasure beyond like measure is like amazing. Like I really enjoy the
Mm.
story, but it's just sometimes the CGI lets me down a bit, and that's like it just
Yeah.
takes me out of it at points.
It takes you out of it. That's exactly right. Yeah.
And
Well,
the problem is I had as well. Oh, sorry to cut you off there, but
no, that's all.
some of the problems I have with the Hobbit as well. I feel like they were too concerned with let's tie it back to Lord of the Rings, because
Mm.
Lord of the Rings was so amazing. My issue with the third one. Obviously, he had him use the ring in the second one, but there wasn't much ties. But I feel like the third one entirely tried to set up Lord of the Rings a bit, especially when you had the
Yeah.
battle when Gandalf was captured, and then
Yeah.
I think Saruman, Lord Elrond, and Lady Galadriel come to
Galadriel.
the rescue. Yeah, it's just like they try to set up Lord of the Rings too much as well there.
Yeah. Right. Mm.
That's what I was concerned with. But I
Yeah.
felt I've watched behind the scenes of The Hobbit, and there was definitely a lot of effort put into it. Obviously, they built sets and everything, but then also you had the green screen stuff. But I just can't, especially Weta Digital, they're a bit hit and miss with their CGI. But with the standards and the budget Hobbit had, I think I think they're it's the most expensive trilogy ever made. I think it was $1 billion put into the three films.
Wow.
When you look at $1 billion put into the three films, and then you look at how much was put into Lord of the Rings, very much obviously inflation and stuff, but still, what Lord of the Rings
Yeah.
produced once, how much you put into the Hobbit, and you still get like video game like graphics in the movie.
Subpar result. Yeah.
Like I've seen scenes in the new game I've played, Ghost of Tsushima. Big plug to Ghost of Tsushima, amazing game. But there's better graphics in that, and looks more real than some of the scenes in the Hobbit.
Yeah. Well, the new series coming out on Amazon Prime,
Yeah,
which
Amazon.
I'm really excited for.
Excited.
Can't wait for that. That's going to have a stupidly large budget.
Yeah, I heard they put like $1 billion
I'm
into that. As well.
encouraged or discouraged by that, because I don't know if that means they're going to, disband from their, practical effect kind of roots that really ground you in the world, or if they'll use it to really, enhance the world building, but keep the characters a central point and not have just random CGI enemies and.
The only thing I'm really excited for that, but I think they put like $1 billion into it, which is a lot of money, but I think they've planned heaps of seasons for it, but no one knows what they're focusing on, which is good. They keep teasing it on Twitter here and there and stuff, but I like how they've kept it like secretive and everything.
Ambiguous. You don't really know.
Yeah. But my only issue is the casting. Like they haven't cast anyone big yet, which is my concern.
Yeah.
I don't like. I want, for example, Ian McKellen to reprise as Gandalf. I want him to come back, but because it's set, I think it's set in the Second Age before.
They've said, I think they've said that, the Second Age. So, but that is an important point, because a lot of people, when I if they do end up watching it. So, well, why is the ring so powerful? And even
Yeah.
with the monologue, doesn't, it's like, well, why doesn't it just make another one?
Yeah.
So that kind of build up in the second age, I think, would
Yeah.
be invaluable. Even
It's
the Lord of the Rings trilogy could really build on it.
it's
Yeah,
gonna be big, but it's gonna obviously there's a lot at stake for it because you got that reputation with the Lord of the Rings name in the Middle Earth. That's the Hobbit had that as well, but this one I
yeah,
don't really want them to screw up what Lord of the Rings is. That's why I'm a bit nervous for it because I don't
yeah,
know.
because it's like a legacy they could
Yeah,
tarnish. Really, yeah,
because
exactly. Like
we've
if
said
the more you make,
yeah
it kind of dilutes the
yeah.
presence of the trilogy
I
and the whole world.
I don't want that to happen. That's why I want them. I don't want them to. I want them because there was. I remember the previous podcast I did with Mr. H. He did an article one time where I think there was an article talking about he reviewed it and they're talking about making Gandalf female or some one character female. They're talking about gender changing. I'm like,
Mm,
you don't change Tolkien's material. What's there, it's there. The material's there for you. Don't change it up. That's all. You don't need to tarnish it. Just whatever's there. Just
yeah,
focus on
exactly.
that. Don't hire writers that are gonna change or make Lord of the Rings based on like today's social political climate. Don't
Yeah,
ruin the writing. Don't make the writing just cater to like to woke people. Like don't do that. Lord of the Rings is what it is. I'm being honest. Like
yeah, right.
Lord of the Rings is what it is. Don't I forgot the word, but don't pander. Don't pander
Yeah,
to a certain demographic. Definitely not. Like
right.
Lord of the Rings
Yeah,
is what it is.
it's not worth distorting the whole
Yeah.
the whole world for a couple of short-term games maybe in the box office or something like
No.
that. It's significant of a franchise to tarnish really. I really think they have to be careful with this series, but I do think it has a lot of potential. I mean, I always thought as a kid, I'd really like to learn more
Yeah.
about that when it's mentioned. I'm like, oh, it'd be so cool if we get a
Yeah.
movie on that, or
I felt like
and things.
I felt like Peter Jackson could have done that. He just like ran out of time up here. Like you saw with the extended editions, like he included a lot, but obviously there's so much more. If you read some of the books, it's really extremely detailed. Apparently they're really hard read.
Mm. Yeah,
So
that's what
obviously he invented his own languages and everything for the books and created different languages. Obviously they're extremely detailed and thorough, and obviously that's why at points maybe some people will get bored in the movies. That's why it's hard to introduce
yeah.
Lord of the Rings to new people because sometimes even like any type of film, if it's so deep and meaningful to you and you're like, oh come on, you're gonna enjoy this, you're gonna love it, and then they'll be like, oh what the heck is this? That's why I feel like I don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, I mean, it is a bit slow at the start, but it definitely pays off,
Oh,
I
it
would say.
definitely phases off. The Hobbit had sort of the same feeling when I first watched it. As I said, first 40 minutes I was really bored, but because I hadn't watched Lord of the Rings before, I didn't know that, oh, it's a slow build up, but then the payoff is eventually like everything. That's why.
Mm, yeah. All right.
Do you have
Well,
anything else to say?
I think that's it, man. I just, if you haven't seen it yet and you're watching this, which is unlikely, but if you
Yeah.
haven't, do it. And if you've seen it and you haven't watched it in a while, go back and watch it. You'll
Yeah,
pick up on.
we're definitely due. Oh, we watched that this year, but I think we're due another watch along soon, hopefully. I think it's just
Yeah.
even those watch alongs on YouTube or like the 2 minute, 3 minute scenes you revisit, those just get me amped here and there. But
Yeah.
I don't know. I think some couple of topics I want to talk about soon as well. One of the series we've definitely been talking about in the chat. A lot of gifts. It's Pirates of the Caribbean, and especially what's
Yeah.
happening now with my boy Johnny Depp and Amber Heard. But I definitely want to visit Pirates of the Caribbean and definitely want to talk about the certain situation because that's very big at the moment. But
Yeah.
also about that. But I don't know. I think we just got to rewatch those as well to see what made those movies fun for me because I enjoy all of them. I have my definitely
So
Pirates of
fun.
the Caribbean is full of plot holes, but like I don't watch them for
Yeah.
like I
Yeah.
don't watch them for like Oscar worthy story or like nuance
Right.
this or like these nuances. I don't want like drama, crying. I just watch them for fun. Like they're Disney movies, I
Mm,
enjoy it. But that's definitely a topic. I want to
definitely.
talk about the films and definitely what's happening now and like the aftermath of what they're gonna do with the sixth movie and what they're planning because I definitely don't agree with it.
All right.
But other than that, thank you
I'd be down to hear that.
guys. Oh, yeah, definitely. Thank you so much,
Yeah.
Cameron, for coming on.
All
Amazing
good. Thanks for
person,
having me on.
amazing guest. Hope you guys enjoyed the Sauvage podcast episode 2. I know it was a bit of a long one. It's an hour and 9 minutes so far, but there will be a link into the description to my other podcast that came out yesterday with Mr. H reviews. Please subscribe to him as well. YouTuber, movie reviews, everything. And we talk about the Predator franchise, so please check that below. And thank you for watching. God bless. Peace out.